Today's question is that age-old question, how do you price your artwork? Hi, my name's Tom Froese. I'm an illustrator and designer in Vancouver, British Columbia, and this is my vidcast where I answer your questions about illustration. My goal here is to give you guys insights and inspiration that will help you become a better illustrator. So hey guys, how's it going? I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a great start to your week or whatever point of the week it is at which you're watching this. Anyway, I have just some quick news, some quick chit chat, and then I'll get into the question. Today's question is that age-old question, how do you price your artwork? This is the most asked question outside of like how do you actually do the illustration, how does the illustration process go kind of thing. Outside of those kinds of questions, this is the most asked question, and it's no wonder because it's one thing to learn how to illustrate, but it's a whole other thing to actually make a living from your illustrations, and pricing is the bedrock of making a living as an artist. So I'll get into the answer to that question, but first of all, some news. So as some of you may know, 2 weeks ago, I was in New York and I gave a talk at Skillshare headquarters, and that was recorded and will be available on Skillshare within a month, I think. So a few of you guys have been asking me, will the talk be available online somehow, because not everyone was able to make it to the talk itself? And the answer is yes, it will be available on Skillshare to premium members, and I'll be sure to announce when that video becomes live, both here and on my Instagram stories. My next little reminder is that in the last episode, I invited you guys to ask me some questions about color. So I'd like to create an entire episode around answering your questions about color. So if you have color-related questions, please ask them in the comments, and I'll compile those questions together and try to answer as many of those as possible in an upcoming episode. Okay, so for a chit chat, in my last episode, I kind of got real with you guys about where I'm at as a creative in terms of creative burnout. This is something that was really affecting me last week particularly. It was just really heartwarming to have you guys respond in the comments with your warm and generous comments and encouragements. And I'd just like to read one of the comments that really, they were also lovely and beautiful, and I thank you for all your comments, but I just wanted to read one that kind of summarized something I think we all go through as creatives, and encountering burnout and being our own worst enemies, our own harshest critics. So this comment comes from, I don't know how to say your name, I believe it's Dutch, and it's Mieke van der Merwe, and that's the only time I'm going to try and say it, spare myself further embarrassment. If I have to name you again, it will be M. I hope that's okay. So M says, thank you for this video. It really helped me gain perspective. I think for myself, a lot of times I also feel like my work is not where it's supposed to be, and that my style is all over the map. People tell me all the time it must be great to work with this and that client, but somehow you still feel like your work is not where it could be. It's almost like I feel that once I finish this freelance job, then I will be satisfied. But as soon as the job is over, it also becomes a discarded toy. I'm really such a fan of your work, and I thought to myself, wow, it must be great to have it all together and to have such an awesome, unique style. But I guess that is what social media does. It makes us see the good parts and not the whole story. It makes us somehow feel we are insignificant and not part of the in crowd. But I can tell you from the bottom of my heart that the work you do does make a difference, even if that difference is a smile on someone's face. That this feeling is a good thing because it will push you to new heights, but then also not to forget that there are people out there who see you as someone to look up to and are inspired by. Thank you for your work. It has inspired me to become a better illustrator and lecturer. So what a gracious and lovely comment to receive in response to my last video. So thank you very much, all of you, for your encouragement and support. It means a lot to me. And just so you know, this week I'm feeling a lot more positive about my work. And we just go through these seasons of burnout and just feeling like we're being hard on ourselves. I'm happy to say this week my mood is better, and at the end of the day, this is my job and I just have to show up regardless of how I feel. And this is what I've been doing for the last or so years as an illustrator and much longer as a designer. And I guess just staying in it hasn't failed me, and I've gotten much further in my career than I ever thought possible. So it's insane that I'm even going through periods of self-doubt when I realize how much progress I've made. So anyway, I think we all go through this, and if you're feeling that way, I want to encourage you guys back. Talk about it with people. Don't bottle it up inside. Talk to friends. Talk to people you know will be encouraging and be able to listen to you. And of course, don't be afraid to just push through those hard feelings and to push through the things that you think you're going to fail at. Don't be afraid of failure. If you're in it as a creative because you love creativity and you love making images, let that be enough through the hard times. Okay, now it's time to get right into the question. The question is, how do you price your work? And for today, I'm not going to get like deep into the more complex type of pricing, which is more value-based, and I'll get into that in a sec. This is more about when you're just starting out, how do you just even begin to think about the value of your work? So I'm actually going to be just reading through my notes here. There's some stuff I don't want to miss, and it's kind of numbery stuff, and I'll do a much better job if I have some notes here versus trying to remember numbers and stuff. Here we go. How do you price your work? When you get an illustration request, there are two possibilities. You're going to get offered a fee, which is typical of editorial assignments. So this is the first scenario where perhaps a magazine will come and say, we need you to illustrate something for this story. It's going to be a quarter page and we'll give you $350 for it. So that's the first scenario. The second scenario is you're going to be asked to provide an estimate or a quote, and basically you're going to have to come up with a fee yourself. If you're just starting out and you get offered a fee for a project, as in the first scenario, if you're happy with the amount being offered, accept it. You can figure out over time whether such amounts are fair or what you'd rather go with. So now if I get offered a fee from a magazine, for instance, sometimes they're a little bit on the low side for me, so I just ask for a little bump, and usually there's a little fruit fly. That's usually just enough to motivate me to actually take on the project. Today, however, I'm going to address the more mysterious question of how to price your illustration when asked to provide a quote or an estimate. I'm going to use quote and estimate kind of interchangeably. This is mostly for illustrators being asked to quote on specific illustration jobs, but it's also helpful for illustrators who want to determine a day rate for contracting themselves out to companies. Sometimes illustrators are asked to come and work on site or remotely for a company for an entire dedicated week, and that's when you would want a day rate. So the answer to pricing kind of ranges from very simple to very complex. On the simple side, it's about determining your base hourly rate and estimating how long a project will take, and then you just multiply these numbers to get your estimate. This is what I call time-based pricing. On the complex side, you price your work based on usage, or what I call value-based pricing. So most people who are asking me this question today are probably beginners. So to determine pricing for a given illustration, you should start with a base hourly rate. You calculate this base hourly rate in the following way. So bear with me here. These are numbery type things and formulas. Are you ready? First, come up with the salary you want to make per year. I don't want to be prescriptive. Everybody will have a different expectation for salaries, so I'm just going to use $30,000 a year as an example for a starting illustrator's salary. Determine how many hours you're going to work in a year. The most basic calculation is 40 hours times 52 weeks, and that equals 2,080 hours per year. But you're likely not going to want to work 40 hours for every single week of the year. There are holidays and stuff like that. So you're going to want to set aside time for vacations and probably a little bit of time for unexpected events like being sick. So let's say you want to take 2 weeks of holidays and have a week aside for unexpected events such as being sick. 2 weeks of holidays is 80 hours, and then another week of sick pay or sick days is 40 hours for a total of 120 hours. You take those 120 hours away from your 2,080 and you get 1,960 total work hours in the year. Of course, you're not going to be illustrating every minute of those 1,960 hours. In fact, you might spend 1/3 to 1/2 of those hours actually just doing other non-illustrated related tasks related to your business, such as paying bills, traveling, doing your taxes, and stuff like that. So let's just be conservative and say you'll only be spending half of the time actually working on client projects specifically. So you divide your annual work hours, so in this case it was 1,960. You divide that by 2 for a total of 980 project hours per year. Now you just divide your annual salary or your salary amount, $30,000, by the project hours, 980. And in this case, we're going to get $30 an hour, roughly. This is kind of like if you didn't have to operate a studio and pay for your phone bill and your internet and stuff like that, this would end up going directly to you. But of course, we have all that overhead that an employee wouldn't have to pay. So an employee with a $30,000 salary gets to take home that salary after taxes, right? $30,000 minus taxes, and then the rest they pocket. They don't have to pay for studio rent and art supplies and stuff like that, or I hope they don't. So let's just say let's just say your overhead ends up being $1,200 a month. So you multiply that by 12 months, that ends up being $14,400 per year. So you add that to your hoped for salary. So $30,000 plus $14,400 is $44,400. This is going to be a little bit more of a realistic number. You divide this by your 980 hours to get a more realistic hourly rate of $45 an hour. Your hourly base rate, or your base hourly rate, is $45 an hour. So in summary, I'm going to give you kind of like the basic formula, and that is base salary plus operating expenses divided by your typical working hours per year is your basic hourly rate. But this doesn't take into consideration the actual time spent on jobs. So assuming you'll spend only about half your time actually working on projects and the other half of the time doing kind of like personal development and office administration, taxes, and all that kind of stuff, you want to divide that whole thing by 2. So your formula for your base hourly rate, therefore, is your base salary plus operating expenses divided by typical working hours per year, all divided by 2. And so this gives you a base hourly rate. So you might determine for yourself that the time you spend on projects is more or less than half of the total time. You might decide for yourself you want to work fewer hours per year or more hours per year. So these are just starting points. All of this is kind of boilerplate, and it's up to you how you kind of adjust these numbers. And I should say that the operating expenses themselves, that's going to take you some time to actually just write up exactly what those cost you. And if you're running a business, this is going to be a reality check. We have to be in touch with how much it actually costs to operate our business. So you want to list all the things that you need to spend per month to operate your business. That might be your studio rent, might be health insurance, art supplies, internet, phone bill, traveling, cat food, whatever it is that's important to running your business. The cat food would be for your pet, not for you. That I'm kind of glossing over that part where you actually have to figure out what those expenses are exactly. And I'm going to find a hourly rate calculator and put it in the show notes, and that should help you guys get started on calculating what your actual operational expenses are. So what I like about the base hourly rate is it becomes a fixed number. We have fixed numbers and variables, right, in math, and your base hourly rate is one fixed number that you have to work with. You don't have to worry about what it is once you've set it. You're gonna base all your estimates on this base rate. Your variable will be time. So I recommend that beginners start with time-based pricing. I've already said this. Your biggest challenge at this point will be to accurately estimate how much time your projects are going to take. But as a general rule, A 10-hour job should cost, in our case, $450, and a 40-hour job should cost $1,800. These are based on our base rate of $45 an hour. If you're hiring yourself out per day, your day rate might be 7 hours times your base hourly rate to be $315. Why 7 hours? Because you take an hour off for lunch. If you're asked what your day rate is, you just take your hourly rate and times it by 7, or if you want to take a half-hour lunch or no lunch, adjust those hours, right? So here's an example of how your hourly rate will actually play into estimating your price. Let's say your friend's band needs a poster. They come to you to design and illustrate it for them. So this is your first job. It's great. So you estimate it's going to take you 1 hour to brainstorm, 2 hours to do some sketches, and then 4 hours to complete a final illustration based on this, on their chosen sketch. So that's 7 hours. Don't forget to include the time spent talking back and forth with your client, and then some more time making changes to the sketches, and then more time making changes to the artwork. So let's just add another 3 hours to make it a nice round total of 10 hours for this poster. Multiply this by your base hourly rate and you get $450. That might seem like a lot to your friend, but don't be shy to ask for a number that ensures you get paid reasonably for your work. That being said, your friend's band might get a bit of sticker shock if you know, they had a lower number in mind. Maybe they wanted to pay you $200 or $300. At this point, you can determine for yourself, and I recommend that you do this for every job, is like you have the number that you wish you could get or think you should get. So in this case, the value of this project is $450. But then you know that your client, in this case the band, is not going to be able to pay that amount. They won't be able to afford it, or they're not expecting it, or something like that. So lower it a little bit so it's not too low, but it's more within range of something they'll find reasonable. So let's say $300. You as a beginning illustrator are going to be taking the hit for the learning curve of being an illustrator. So as you grow and develop as an illustrator, you're going to get more efficient and better, and you'll be able to charge actually more per hour because you'll get the job done in less time. But for now, you have this number of what you think you should get for the poster, but of course you want to bring it down a little bit so that you'll actually be able to do the project and they won't go and design their own poster, which would be sad because you're super excited to do this illustration, right? Next point is, in reality, you're probably going to spend more time than 10 hours on this poster. You're more likely to spend 25 or maybe even 40 hours on the poster, especially because you're just figuring things out and eager to make this amazing. Of course, your friend's band is certainly not going to be able to afford $1,200, $1,800 for the artwork, but because you're new, you're willing to kind of take the hit. So I've already just described this, over time you get better at doing the work faster, and you'll also become a better illustrator and hopefully more in demand, and therefore you can charge more for your work. But again, I'm assuming a lot of you are starting out, and that's why you need the pricing advice. So charge less than what the time value of the work is, and more based on the fact that like this is a real project. You get to put it on your portfolio. It's for, in this case, it's for a band. It's really exciting. You love music. You know, there's other reasons than money to do the work, but the important thing is you're getting paid, and it's a rate that you can live with and something that your client feels is fair. So really, this is all there is to pricing at first, just having your base hourly rate and then timesing it by the estimated time you'll spend on the project. And then you fudge this number up or down based on how big a price your client will pay and how confident you are as an illustrator. Sometimes the client will just look at your price and kind of just walk away. And it could be that they weren't serious to begin with, or maybe they're hoping that you'd work for them for like bargain basement prices or even for free, in which case no loss to you. You'll actually be surprised how often clients will actually pay you what you're asking, even when you're starting out. So don't be afraid to ask for what you think the work is worth. Now, I had mentioned earlier that you don't want to admit fully to your client that you're basing the fees on an hourly rate, because that opens you up to unnecessary conversations. Why should you never openly base your work on hours? because as illustrators, we actually don't charge our clients by the hour. The base hourly rate is just a number that helps us give value to something that is intangible. When talking about prices to your client, don't say it will cost X per hour. Just say an illustration of such and such dimensions or for this particular thing will cost X dollars. That comes across much more confidently and feels more authoritative, meaning that the client is actually just less likely to question you on it. But on the flip side, if you get asked, what are you basing your pricing on? You can honestly say, I base my fees partly on the time I'll spend on it, but there's also an inherent value to the work that goes beyond the time. So you can actually confidently explain that you have a rational, logical reason for where your number came from. You didn't just pull it out of the air. That's good for the client to know, and of course good for honest illustrators like us to know that we're not just pulling numbers out of our bumholes. The point of the hourly rate is to give you a fixed number to base your pricing off of, which is reasonable and is based on what you actually need to earn your goal or target salary. And again, in this case, it was $30,000. It could be any number you want. I'm just using this as an example. Okay, so another reason you don't want to open up the conversation to hourly rates is because in some cases, you're actually not going to spend as much time on an illustration as you estimated. Even though you're pricing based on hours, the illustration has value to the client that's not about hours at all. Think about the function your art will play in selling your band's clients tickets, for instance, or bolstering their name in wherever the posters are going to end up. Your art isn't just something they pay for and appreciate from an artistic standpoint. It's something that's actually building their brand and helping them drive sales and future sales. So I've talked now about why you shouldn't just openly talk about hourly rates for most illustration jobs. I just want to quickly touch on one other thing that's important, but it kind of gets more into that value-based pricing, which is a little bit beyond what I'm able to talk about in this video. But you do want to state in your estimate that you own the copyright to your illustration. You want to be aware of contracts that are so-called work for hire, because in such case, all the work, including the sketches, everything you do while working on that project will be the property of your client, and they get to do whatever they want with the work, including making their own changes to it, changing colors, adding little googly eyes, and slapping it on products for sale, for which you'll never see a penny. So like you want to avoid this scenario where like you create artwork for this band friend of yours and it was for posters, but now they're modifying it and putting it on t-shirts and they're selling those t-shirts, and they're profiting from your artwork and you never see any extra money. And let's just say that that band gets big and your poster art goes viral, and they have the total right to use that illustration as much as they want and earn as much as they want by selling it on products such as t-shirts or mugs or enamel pins or whatever. You never get anything back as the original artist. And as much as possible, you want to own the copyright. So legally you can say, at least, I don't want you changing the artwork in this way. Otherwise I can't put my name on it, that kind of thing. Another worst case scenario is that a client won't let you even show the work you did that you're proud of on your own portfolio. I remember doing a project for a client way early on that I was so proud of. It was for actually a big Hollywood production studio, and to have my name associated with this project, and it was actually in like a TV show series. I can't even put it on. I can't put the work on my portfolio. I can't list the client as a client that I've worked with. That's how restrictive it was. And as much as possible, you want to avoid the scenario. You want at least the right to use the work in your portfolio freely without permission, and to also be able to enter that work into awards competitions, because every project we make is an advertisement for the next project we haven't done yet. That's one of the most valuable things about being an illustrator today, especially when we can use our work and put it online, social media and stuff like that. This is how we get word out there, by our own work. Our own work is our own salesperson. Make sure you own the copyright to your work. So if a client actually wants to own the copyright, this is called buyout. And to sell all the rights to the image, industry standard is 100 to 300% over and above what you get paid to do the illustration initially. So let's just use our poster example again. If you charged $450 for the artwork to be used as a poster, that's a done deal. If the band client wants to own that image and use it however they want, including t-shirts, mugs, enamel pins, or whatever, and add googly eyes to it, you might shudder at the thought of it, but at least you can ask for more payment. And in an ideal world, you can charge that full 300% over and above. So then it ends up being 4 times the amount you were originally going to make. And that's just a way of protecting yourself against any future losses you have from not being able to use that image to promote yourself, or not being able to sell that image for other purposes in the future. At this point, we're actually getting pretty complex with our pricing conversation, and as you can see, things get really dicey very fast. I certainly can't go into it today, but I do recommend purchasing a hard copy or digital copy of this bad boy. I talk about this all the time. This is a bit of an older edition, but this is the Graphic Artists Guild Handbook Pricing and Ethical Guidelines. This is edition 14. I think they're up to edition 15 now. And fortunately, you don't actually have to get this whole hard copy book anymore. You can actually buy it in sections as PDF format from their website. But I actually find having this book around as a reference really helpful. There's a whole bunch of material in here about copyright, and then there are very specific conversations in here about the different creative industries like illustration, pattern design, and stuff like that. And then for illustration, for instance, they have these tables of prices based on the exact kind of work to be done. Comparative fees for advertising illustration, animated television commercials, motion picture posters. So it gets very specific, and then it gives you price ranges. And I can't stress how much this has helped me. And it's helped me really actually jump from time-based pricing to value-based pricing. And that's because the prices in here don't know how long it's going to take you to create the artwork. It just says this is what this kind of illustration costs for this kind of client. So super helpful. But even still, because there are price ranges like $200 to $400 for a quarter page or a spot illustration in a book. You know, this is one example. I can say, well, based on my hourly rate, I'm more in the like $200 per hour range than the higher price. And so no matter where you are as an illustrator, whether you're more experienced like myself, or you're more just starting out and beginning, knowing what your base hourly rate is really helps you kind of understand where you fit when it comes down to like lower or higher fees. So yeah, when I started illustrating, this is how I based my pricing by time and hourly rate. And today, by and large, my fees are disconnected from time spent and much more value-based. Like I said, I still know what my hourly rate is, and I can still gauge whether a project is worth taking time based on how long I think it will take. For instance, I was recently offered a map commission by a national magazine here in Canada, but their fee was lower than what I wanted. Based on how long I know it takes me to do a map illustration, the hourly rate would end up being under what I've grown to expect for myself at my level. So I was able to decline this otherwise perfectly good job with a good conscience and confidence. I said, this is what it will cost. I actually countered them and said, here's my counter offer for this illustration. And they said, we probably can't up our budget for this project. If I didn't know what my hourly rate was, I might feel a little bit foolish for losing a job. Like I said, over time, you begin to know what you need to earn, and then it helps you actually say no to perfectly good jobs so that you can take on jobs that pay you what you need to earn to meet your own personal financial goals. So that's all I have. Thanks guys for sticking it through this far. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about how to create a base hourly rate. This is really just the beginning of how this works. And again, I really hope that you go to some of the links that I sent. I'm not affiliated with any of them, but they're just starting points for you to start exploring what your own needs are from an hourly rate perspective. If this video has helped you, please like it and let me know how it helped you in the comments. And if you've been watching these videos for a while and they're helping you out, please consider subscribing. When you subscribe to my channel, it really is a vote for keeping this thing going. It encourages me, it lets me know that my audience is in fact growing and I'm reaching more people, which is my goal. Last year my goal was to reach 1,000 subscribers and I pretty much made that. This year my goal is to reach 3,000 subscribers and I think I'm at around 1,300 subscribers today, and I'm really hoping to boost growth on the channel so that I can reach more of you guys with these insights and inspiration. If you know someone who would watch these videos and get a lot from them, please share, let them know about it. Don't hog this all to yourself. I want this to be for everyone. Invite and include, and let's build this community together. Anyway, thanks guys for watching. I hope you guys have a great week. Keep making great work and keep asking great questions.